I've been covering Antifa for probably about 10 years now. So coming on something like that. And it was insufferable watching Antifa essentially kind of crawl out of the woodwork in the United States and Europe and in Britain. In Britain, our Antifa was a lot more muted than elsewhere. The American ones were quite radical, but it was really the German ones that are the most insane. The largest black bloc ever of about 13,000 people took place. I think it was in Frankfurt a few years ago. Yeah, it was huge. And a black bloc, for anyone who doesn't know, is where they just dress up in black and act like a roving gang of barbarians, attacking everything they deem to be fascist, which includes family values and Christians and anything that's not communist. And it's used as a way to push out their most negative feelings and really act as just a violent mob. And so it's nice to see them actually getting cracked down, because you may remember that in sort of 2018, 2019, they'd get favorable coverage from places like CNN or Vice News or any vaguely MSNBC lefty outlets. And it was quite shocking because, of course, the fundamental problem with Antifa is they break the base agreement that underpins liberal democracy. That is, we will solve our problems non-violently. We will solve them democratically through discourse and the vote, rather than actually just beating each other up. And watching the police forces and the powers that be being very soft on Antifa was very frustrating. I'm not going to give people a long list of things that they've done that they should have been deeply, deeply punished for now, but you can go and find basically loads of things. Well, I mean, like the mayor of Portland getting his apartment block set on fire, and things like this, which just genuinely endangers, dozens of people.
And so many of those people being people that push them on and continue to support them.
And many of the people in Antifa themselves being academics or people who have radicalized themselves in universities. But anyway, so there's a very brief history of Antifa, but some good news. So over the weekend, there was, I think it was on Friday actually, there was a protest in Seattle. Now, this was a Christian organization that decided that they were going to have a national tour being opposed to the transing of children. Now, I would have thought this would have been a fairly straightforward thing that we could all agree upon, but of course, there are evil people in society. And what I like about the evil people in our society is they'll just come out and tell you that they're evil. So the Christian protest was about 500 people, and they were met by about 500 people counter-protesting them. And the counter-protesters, so the Christian protesters were waving flags that had things like "Don't mess with our kids," children can't consent to this kind of thing, etc., all very sensible, all very mature. And the people on the other side denounced them as, quote, fascist family values protest.
Of course.
So of all of the long list of things that are now fascism, clean streets, safety, law and order, family values have been added to that.
Having children, probably.
Probably having children itself.
Keeping time.
Yeah.
Maths.
Yes.
Civilization.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think of anything that hasn't been called fascist at this point. And so, the counter-protesters turned up with their Trump fascist regime flags, and we were clearly given a show of who's on the side of good and who is on the side of evil. As the Seattle Times here reports, sorry, it was on Saturday, not Friday. By Saturday night, police had made 23 arrests on various charges. That's a lot of arrests. I mean, like, the average, like, Tommy Robinson back in the EDL days, you wouldn't get 23 arrests. But that's a lot of arrests from very white, middle-class, well-to-do types who, as you can see, like, there's not very much diversity being represented here. Kind of insufferable. But anyway, so the police had arrested 23 of them, which is a lot. The protesters said they aimed to counter the, quote, well-funded anti-trans, anti-queer event that was led by far-right Christian activists. Well, the question is, who's funding you? Because, I mean, this is another thing with Antifa and all of these sort of rent-a-mob protesters that they have, is they're always very well-funded. So the fact that they're like, oh, you're very well-funded. So, yeah, I feel like you might be holding up a mirror here. But anyway, So this was the May Day rally that was held at the heart of the queer community. So we have identified the heart of the queer community. It's in Seattle. Wouldn't have known, actually. I wouldn't have guessed. And roughly 500 people attended either way. The protesters, of course, shouted, "Go home, fascists." The mayor of Seattle released a statement siding with the rioters. Of course he did. Because the thing is with a place like Seattle and Portland, they have been incrementally more leftized as time has gone on. And the people in charge of these places have, of course, found themselves trying to appease a mob that fundamentally wants the abolition of their positions. And this is what Wheeler found in Portland when he tried to join an Antifa mob back in like 2019 or something like this. And he just got chased out because, of course, they're like, no, you're part of the fascist system. Don't you understand our values? We are anarchists. We are communists. We want the total destruction of the state and every position within it.
I was going to say, it's one of the things that true commies or even anarchists, leftist anarchists say is that liberals get the noose too.
Yes.
Yeah, we hate the far right, of course.
No, that was a particular thing from California. Liberals get the bullet too.
But liberals are standing in the way just as much.
Yes.
So there's that. There's one thing, a broader point to make. I think it's interesting that when we were younger, the 80s, the 90s, even the early 2000s, Antifa just wasn't a thing. Well, wait, not that it wasn't a thing.
Not in Britain, anyway.
But it just wasn't ever part of the discourse. You'd never see black blocs or anything like that.
Oh, no.
I found it interesting because by the time it did become a thing in the 2010 era, I was already conversant enough with history to know that sort of anti-fascism does go back deep into the 20th century, way back. I mean, look at George Orwell in Spain, for example. Or
you've got Italy, Germany and Spain. Yeah.
So the idea of an anti-fascist movement, it didn't come out of nowhere in sort of 2015, right? It was sort of, it was rekindled, it was re-brought alive. Just one of the things that is kind of surprising. If you'd asked me in the year 2000, what's going to be going down in the year 2020, say,
Mobs of armed communists terrorizing people was not on my list.
Yeah, I wouldn't have said that a rise of militant anti-fascists in Western democracies. You would not have guessed that.
No, but this is fundamentally the problem with the liberals and the communists is that they follow the same value set fundamentally, which is why the liberals are always like, well, you know, they are saying they're for freedom and equality and tolerance and good things that I agree with. They're just insane radicals who have decided that actually the norms of democratic society go out of the window in pursuit of these things. And so the liberals are incredibly soft on this. Whereas if you had a rally of actual fascists who are chanting like death to all black people or something like that, they'd crack down on that like this. They would have absolutely no sympathy for it whatsoever. But instead you've got Bruce Harrell here speaking of the violent communist riots, quote, "The far-right rally was held here to provoke a reaction by promoting beliefs that are inherently opposed to our city's values." But apparently, a mob of violent communists are not inherently opposed to the city's values. And that's the problem with the liberal and the communist. The communists will always dog the liberal because the liberal made a series of promises at the beginning of their own philosophy saying, yeah, no, we're going to have liberty and equality for all. And the communists are like, okay, well, where is it? And the liberal's like, what do you mean, where is it? And it's like, no, we've got the liberty. Where's the equality? And the liberal's like, well, I mean, we'd have to do some really radical stuff to get that. And they're like, yeah, we would. And we're waiting. And so this is why they'll sit there and say, well, those Christians who are like protect children, far right, don't agree with their values.
Also, when they say about the values of our city, of course, they're saying that Seattle is our commune. Yes. And actually that, the city itself, because we've taken over it, fundamentally stands for something apart from what the rest of the country stands for, what America more broadly stands for in an act of defiance. You know, they think that they're the guys on the walls in the French Revolution, standing against...
They do. Yeah, this is the Paris Commune.
Storming the Bastille.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you've spoken lots about the route where liberalism and the far left come from sort of, ideologically speaking, the same route, the same place. But in the modern era, or in the 20th century, certainly, I would think it's fair to say, is that it's just sort of a fundamental misunderstanding, whether deliberate or not, on the part of the liberals, to think that the extreme left are in fact just a more radical, just a more radical version of themselves. When they say we just want liberal things, we just want liberty, laissez-faire, all that sort of thing, and the communists laissez-faire economics, and the commies, the anarchists, are like, no, we fundamentally want something different, and the liberals just often just don't hear it.
Well, you see this...
It's because it's couched in the language the liberal uses to describe the world.
And this is why consistently you see with different democratic parties across Europe that invariably the centrist or centre-right parties will always side with the far-left party when it comes to a coalition against something more reactionary.
Yeah, I mean, not even. I mean, is it even reactionary to say a bunch of Christians saying "stop transing kids"? Is that even political? Right? Is that like, where would you put that on a political compass? Prior to the modern era of woke, right? Because if you go back to like the 60s or 70s, literally everyone's going like, of course we're not going to transgender children. What are you, mad? The most hardened Democrat would be like, that would be insane. Why would we do that?
Certainly not reactionary. And if you choose to label it, then good, I'm a reactionary.
Yeah, okay, there we go.
Okay, I'll be a reactionary. Well, fine, I'm reacting against something evil. Yeah.
And I feel I have an obligation to do so. So but this is the point. Like, to provoke a reaction by promoting beliefs that are inherently opposed to our city's values. So our city is predicated on transing children, right? If Seattle can't trans children, it's basically a fascist city, is what the mayor is saying, because this took place in the heart of Seattle's most prominent LGBTQ plus neighborhood. It took place on Capitol Hill. So, I mean, I believe it,
Classic.
He went on, but the thing is, and this is where, Bo, your liberal anarchist distinction comes in, right? He says, anarchists infiltrated the counter-protesters and inspired violence. They are the counter-protesters. The liberal, like, look, I just don't want to believe that they're all a bunch of insane, brutal commies. It's like, yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, you had to arrest a bunch of them. They're the ones who started the violence. They went on to criticize the Christian group, of course, saying, like various activists were saying things like, well, they want to protect children from people supposedly bad because of misinformation about trans people. You didn't say they were lying, though. It's misinformation, but it's not a lie. Interesting use of language. So the obviously the Christian side said, look, they say we don't like people, but we're not the ones throwing things. We're here to love Jesus, which sounds pretty stock Christian to me. It's the sort of thing I'd expect a Christian to say. And of course, they weren't the ones throwing things. They did get stuff thrown at them. They were called fascists. So there were some updates in this one, which was funny. So basically, by the middle of the afternoon, clashes had continued around the park, with police deploying pepper spray on the protesters. Various arrests were committed after objects were thrown, and minor property damage was done. By 6 o'clock, the police had requested, quote, mutual aid. It's a weird.
What does that mean?
Isn't it?
What does that even mean?
Aid. Does that not ring a bell to you?
I'm hoping that means the National Guard. I know it won't. We'll bring in the National Guard, rolling an Abrams or two.
It wasn't the National Guard. They just requested extra police officers. But they tweeted out, we have requested mutual aid. There's only one particular reference to the term mutual aid that I'm aware of. And it's a book written by anarchist communist Peter Kropotkin called Mutual Aid.
Right.
Okay.
I've not heard of it.
Well, I had to read it for my degree. Oh. And so, it's a very strange turn of phrase that they would use, because you would think they'd request backup, or reinforcements, or something just normal, rather than mutual aid. That's a very peculiar thing, and it seems that they're kind of signaling to the protesters that they are currently
That's what it sounds like, doesn't it?
Right? And I'm not saying that is what's happening. I don't know, but there's only one, like, the one term that the one place that the phrase mutual aid is used that I can think of, and it's literally in a book by a communist revolutionary. So that's weird.
Someone in the press department of the Seattle PD is a well-read pinko. I mean, it seems.
I certainly wouldn't doubt.
The shock there being that they're well-read at all.
Well, yeah. So by 7 o'clock, the mayor had taken the unusual step of putting out a statement saying that, look, The protesters did nothing wrong. It was the anarchists who had stepped in. Seattle is proud of our reputation as a welcoming and inclusive city, unless you're in favor of the integrity of children's bodies. And then we're literally going to throw things at you and get ourselves arrested trying to stop you. So,
it's all love and peace.
Yeah.
Unless you're a Christian.
Yeah. That's literally, yes.
There is something hard baked into even socialism, let alone actual communism or anarchism, which is at odds with the family unit. I mean, collectivization, the collectivization of people is at war with the family unit.
Yeah, all of honestly, liberal philosophy at bottom kind of is, because it bases itself on chosen obligations rather than unchosen obligations, and the family is a series of unchosen obligations that you are born into, whether you like it or not. And so this is why you get social services trying to liberate children from their parents if the parents are being untoward. Now, don't get me wrong, something has to be done in those cases, but the liberal answer is just, well, put them into foster care and then good luck. So I don't know, man. That seems like it might be a little bit extreme. And I think there might come a time in the future where the state being able to arbitrarily take children off of their parents might actually be considered a bad thing.
That in the final analysis, you belong to the party or the state, not your parents.
Yes, because the state is the one that has taken upon itself the obligation to enforce your quote-unquote human rights. And so the state has imbued in children the liberatory message and requirement for it to justify coming in and saying, nope, you're not doing what we want. So you might be homeschooling your children into Christian morality or something, and the state might be like, well, that doesn't teach them about transgenderism, does it? And you'll be like, no, it doesn't. And the state, well, they need liberating then. You know, this is a form of oppression.
Re-education.
Yeah, it could be anything. So anyway, by the end of the day, 22 people have been arrested, and not a great look. But again, like, the mayor comes out and says, look, we oppose the extreme right wing who are in opposition to trans people's humanity. It's like, no one's saying they can't have humanity. What we're saying is, don't transgender children because they can't consent to it. It's really not an extreme position, right? I don't think that makes you extreme right wing. And I would be very concerned if I lived in Seattle if that did make me extreme right wing, frankly. But anyway, either way, it's nice to see them getting arrested. And I can't help but feel if they weren't getting arrested, then Trump would be weighing in on this, right? So the fact that the police, I mean, there are lots of photos of the police just yet. Right, that's it. You know, billy club time, pepper spray time, no more of this nonsense. And one can't help but think that if this had been handled in the way that it had been handled in previous eras, Trump would be coming down on this like a ton of bricks. So...
yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, when you think back to about 4 or 5 years ago, how easily, you know, Antifa would have been able to get on with all this just without any pushback whatsoever from law enforcement, and, you know, BLM as well, when the BLM riots were going on, how far they were able to get.
I feel like Trump has actually shown incredible restraint. You remember in his first administration, there was that CHAZ thing. I kept thinking any day he's going to send in, swamp it with cops. Like the sort of those semi-militarized American cops, and just end it all. And he never did. He just let it implode. That shows a remarkable restraint, really, because if I was president at the time, I may well have ordered the governor or whatever to do something about it before it descended into actual homicides.
To be fair, it was probably wise of Trump to.
No, it was. In hindsight, he made the right move.
Yeah.
I would have been too authoritarian.
Yeah.
Trump did make the right move in terms of optics and everything.
And not only that, there's going to be arguments about what, you know, federal and state power and, you know, what he's entitled to do, but also just allowing the fruits of their own product to blossom. Okay, well, and we'll get into the CHAZ in a minute. In fact. So anyway, you're not going to be surprised to learn that many of the people involved were not exactly their best and brightest. You've got here. Antifa Trantifa member Michaeli Andrew Baker, who is a member of the Youth Liberation Front, who was arrested. Baker is a certified state delegate for Bernie Sanders in 2020. Been arrested repeatedly at Antifa riots, but has faced no consequences. So, I mean, basically, they are kind of sending people who definitely don't have a history of mental illness, right? I think we can all agree that that's certainly not the case there. And this has been supported by, of course, the people involved. As you can see here, Sean Scott is a Washington state representative for the 43rd District. And I assume him says, we should celebrate Capitol Hill counter-protesters who aren't letting anti-trans extremists into Washington's historic stronghold of LGBT life without a fight, and standing up for the unaccountable police in the process. Okay. I guess that's one perspective on it. And this, of course, hate has no place in the 43rd Legislative District, unless it's against anti-trans extremists, right? We're allowed to hate that.
Unless normal people.
Yeah.
Unless it's against pro-family Christians, in which case, go for your life.
Yeah, and this was indeed on the site of the Capitol Hill occupied protest of the CHAZ.
The exact same spot?
I'm not sure.
More or less,
it's at the Capitol Hill, so yeah, I think it was.
Okay.
Right. So this was at the Capitol Hill in Seattle itself, where several blocks, I think there's actually a map here, there we go. So you can see the area occupied by the CHAZ, or the CHOP, however it's called, where 2 people were shot and killed. There were 2 non-fatal shootings. There was a series of arsons, thefts, sexual assaults. And one study after the fact came to the conclusion that the crime rate in the CHOP and the CHAZ was 132.9% higher than in other areas of Seattle during the same period, which is very interesting, isn't it?
It ended up got taken over by a warlord, didn't it?
Yeah.
It's like an individual gang member dude who just proclaimed himself sort of
and then the
emperor.
feds...
That's proper communism.
Yeah.
And then the feds had to come in and basically bulldoze the lot of it, yeah. So that was an interesting experiment that went very well. And there was another trial that I found from 2024 in May so I did a bit of snooping around the subject, and a jury in San Diego found a couple of anti-fascist conspirators guilty of conspiracy to riot. So them going to a protest in January 2021, fighting members of the Proud Boys and calling Donald Trump fascist, they were found guilty of conspiracy to riot, which is interesting because that kind of means that this could be used as a precedent in future cases. Oh, you've turned up in black bloc with, various pieces of equipment that could be used as weapons. Well, that's conspiracy to riot, and this is now a precedent in US law. So whether that goes anywhere or not, I have no idea, but the point being, it's nice to see that Antifa are actually starting to get their comeuppance as they should have been. They should never have been tolerated in the first place, but thankfully it's not being tolerated now.
It reminds me of an incident back in the, I can't remember the exact dates, but I think it might have been the 70s, back when Ronald Reagan was governor of California. Mm-hmm. And there was a big, basically it's some sort of Antifa hippie, some sort of leftist thing going on in a park in Berkeley, California. And he sent in sort of the riot squad. He read the riot act, smashed it all up, and they hark back to that even to this day. But yeah, just at some point,
we should be doing the same, but just being but a good thing.
At some point, it does turn into, well, what you can only really describe as sedition. Like that CHAZ thing is sort of, I would describe it as seditious.
It's hard to describe it as anything else.
Yeah.
They literally call it an autonomous zone, liberated from the United States. Right. Like, I don't know what else that's supposed to be called.
The Constitution of the United States doesn't run here.
Which is why so many people are getting raped and murdered.
So,
Exactly.
I'm not even joking, actually. But yeah, so good news, basically, is that law and order seems to be being restored, even in the most lefty areas of the United States. I suspect it's probably Trump's influence. But good.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.